In this video, I'm going to show you 5 engaging music lesson activities that you can use to help your students better understand what is timbre in the music they like to listen to. Hi, my name is Julia from Julia Teaching Resources, and I'm a music teacher with over 20 years of experience in the music classroom. In this video, I'm going to show you 5 engaging music lesson activities that you can use to help your students better understand what is timbre in music. These activities are really simple to set up and are a lot of fun for both your students and you, the teacher. So without further ado, let's get started. Five fun, engaging music lesson activities to teach what is timbre in music. Let's get started. So welcome. As said, I'm going to give you 5 lesson ideas for teaching what is timbre in music, as well as some suggested resources to use. Now, I must admit, in this particular video, I've got a lot more resources than normally I do, but it's up to you whether you choose to use them or not. So let's get started. Number 1. Identify the instruments listening activity. Now, for this fun, what is timbre in music lesson activity, put your students into small groups. You know, I like some group work, and give them a piece of paper or a mini whiteboard. There's a couple of ways we can do this activity, and I'll give you some options in a minute. Next, put on a piece of paper, put on a piece of music, not a piece of paper, and ask them to write down each instrument that they think they can hear. You might need to play the music a couple of times for each group to be able to list all the instruments in the music. So all you're doing and all you're wanting them to do is simply just list all the instruments that they think they can hear. Once the group has written down their answers, discuss the answers and to see which group could identify the instruments correctly. Now, big hint. What I like to do when I'm doing this particular activity is I deliberately find music that is being performed live through YouTube, so a live version of whatever song it is, so that we can actually, if the student has identified a certain instrument, we can watch and see whether or not that instrument was actually there. And it's surprising because there was a couple of songs I did with my Year 10s recently, and I went, I don't think I can hear that. And we put it on, and the student was right. I had not heard that instrument at all, but they had. So as I said, it's a really good way to do it is to use YouTube videos of live performances. Obviously, when they're doing the listening part, you don't let them see the video, you let them just listen, okay? As I said, it's good just to reveal it that way, and then you can actually see who's actually got it right or not. Now, another way you could do this is extend activity is to ask students to classify. Once they've listed it, get them then to classify each instrument in the way that you want them to classify. So it could be, you know, do you want it to be via the families, like as in string family, woodwind family, brass family, etc., or would you rather use classifications like idiophone, membranophone, aerophone, chordophone, electronic sounds, all those sorts of things? Up to you which way you want to use. Now, you can find more information about that over on my blog over at on my blog, okay, at juliagia.com. I've got a great blog post all about timbre and music, which I'll talk about again later. But that's a fantastic way to actually get some great information. Good way for kids to see how to classify instruments as well. So that's one way you can extend this activity. Now, the other one is then to actually get them to not only classify the instruments, but then discuss and name the type of technique used to create the sound, okay? And if you want to extend it even further, get them to describe the sound. So what is the actual unique sound quality of that instrument? Does the guitar sound strong, powerful, dirty, grungy, clean, anything like, you know, or is the flute shrill, piercing, beautiful, delicate, angelic? They're the sorts of words. So you can extend this activity quite easily by Firstly, getting them just to list the instruments, and it's a low, it's not hard for them to do that. Okay, they can easily go, oh yeah, I can do that, and then extend it as you go. Another way you might want to do this, and I like to do things hands-on, is to use the instrument cards. Now, I've got a couple of different versions in my store. There's one that's an instruments match it puzzle card, as well as the world music ones. Now, in those particular ones, you get a picture of the instrument, the name of the instrument, and the classification. So that's another way that you can extend on this activity. Sometimes it's easier just to have all the instruments spread out, and as they hear them, they can pick them up and put them down and say, you know, what they could actually hear. Again, another way to get the kids involved, doing something a bit different in terms of just listening and writing. Okay, we don't want to just do that. All right, so that's one way to do it. Again, don't forget, you could use the orchestra ones or the world music ones, depending on the type of ensemble, or you might want to give them all. Give all of the cards out and say, what do you reckon? Okay, it's good to have a good variety of instruments for your kids to actually choose from. Number 2, experiment with sound making. Now, what I mean by this is not just to make sound in the usual manner on the instrument. So if we take, for example, the set of bongos that the little girl is playing there, you can obviously hit the top of the bongo, but you can also hit the side or underneath. So what other sounds can be made? You can hit the rim. Okay, you could hit the metal. What other sounds can be made? And that's what I'm talking about with experimenting with sound, like sound making. So as a class, you need to discuss the instruments that are out. So I would grab out whatever instruments you have in your classroom, whatever you want your students to use, okay? And ask them to show the instruments and have a couple of discussions. So you might want to talk about what is the name of the instrument, how is the sound produced on that instrument, what can the instrument be classified as and why, and what words can you use to describe what is the timbre in the music that the instrument makes. So that's just some general lead-in stuff. Then once you've done that, break your students into small groups and give each group a collection of instruments. You might want them to choose, you might want them to have the actual same instruments, and then get them to actually experiment making different sounds. Now, for example, if a student's got a guitar, you can obviously strum it, you can pick it, but you can also hit it. Okay, and it can be quite rhythmic, or you can, depending on what you have, you can also then, if you're using, say, pedals and things, you can actually record into that thing and do a vocal line through that recording. Okay, there's an Australian musician, Kate Miller-Heidke, that I've seen a number of times live. She's amazing, but one of the songs that she performs, because her husband is her guitarist, is she actually sings into the guitar sound hole so that it loops then her voice through this song. It's amazing. You like, if you ever get a chance to see her live, she is amazing. Okay, but think of different ways they can make a sound. So I've just talked about a couple. So it might be, shaking it. Well, does it make a sound, or do you have to hit it, or can you actually hit sides of the instruments or backs of instruments or whatever? And then get them to actually compose an unconventional soundscape. Now, for the soundscape, you might give them actually a story, and you might, as a class, decide that the story is a certain thing. Okay, again, it might be something you're watching or listening to in your classroom, what you're actually studying at the time. But get them to actually be creative. Now, they could also use environmental sounds. So it's all about, music is not always just about playing an instrument. Sometimes it's making sounds with other things. So, if I've got my bottle here, I can make a sound like that. Makes another sound. Another sound. And sorry for those of you who might need to go to the bathroom when you've heard that water rushing. Sorry about that. But this is the sorts of things I'm asked. I get my kids to actually experiment with the sounds that they can make and can create, and understand that music isn't such a rigid thing. Okay, it's meant to be that. And again, let them have their creativity loose. Then get them to come back and show the class what sort of sounds they were able to create. What was their soundscape like? Number 3. Now, this is one of my all-time favorite assignments to do with my kids. Now, I usually do this one when we've been studying the instruments of the orchestra, because then we've also just studied how to classify an instrument, because that's really important that they know how to do that. So with this one, you can actually get the kids, obviously, to make different instruments. Now, I use it as an assignment. I said they make the instruments at home, bring it in. But for those kids who may not have much access to much at home, I usually, before I know when I'm teaching this one, it's usually term 2, is I'll start collecting things for them. So it might be boxes, it might be ice cream containers, it might be balloons or whatever it is. I'll start collecting things so that kids, if they don't have anything to use, they can actually use that. But obviously, you know, a bottle, some rice, some rocks, okay, whatever else they want to make, shakers are nice and simple. One of the best ones I had was a kid, actually, they made their own tapping sticks. You know, here in Australia, our Aboriginal people use tapping sticks, and they call them tapping sticks as opposed to clave. And so, forgive me if I say that, but they made their own tapping sticks, and it was the most beautiful sound. And I said to them, "What did you use for the wood? Because it's a really great sound." They said, "Well, we experimented a lot, and the best was actually the broom." And I went, "You did get permission to cut up that broom, didn't you?" They said, "Yes, I did, miss. It's okay." So, but it was one of the best ones. But the thing is, with this particular assignment, if you're going to use the one that I've got in my store, is not only have they got to create the instrument, they've actually got to perform on it for 30 seconds. Now, that is much harder than you think. So if you've only got a shaker and you've got to come up with ways that you can make different sounds for 30 seconds, that's really quite hard. And so, you might want to change it, how you want to do that. But it's just a really good way to get them to actually talk about instruments and making sounds and whatever. The other part to this particular assignment is not only have they got to make the instrument, they've got to perform on it, but they've actually got to do a whole heap of self-reflection stuff. So classifying the instrument, the procedure they use to, write down the procedure they use to actually construct it, then some other self-reflection things. So it's a really great assignment. It might seem really simple, but it's actually quite a hard one. I love doing this year after year, but I will give you a hint. One year we had done it, and it was just before the end of term 1 and going into term 2, and we just put all the instruments in the staff room, and it was just the way it worked out. So we come back into the staff room after holidays, and something really smells in here. I don't know what it is. Anyway, it took us a while to work it out, and what it was is one of our students had used a pumpkin to actually make a guitar, and they'd used one of those back scratchers, and they'd put it through the pumpkin and then stretched elastic bands, which was very, very clever. But the problem is, over the holidays, the pumpkin had started to rot. So that's so we then made a rule: can't use anything that breaks down, and anything biodegradable, like in terms of that sort of stuff. We want something that's not going to rot. Big hint. I said we didn't make that mistake again. All right. Number 4, I love a good listening lesson. I like to compare different pieces of music, but a compare and contrast lesson. Now, with this one, try and get 2 recordings of the same song that are using very different music ensembles. And again, if I'm doing this in class, I try and use YouTube clips. So I try and use that have got the live performance. Okay. So one of my favorite ones to use, again, I'll use Kate Miller-Heidke, but she does a great version of Psycho Killer by the Talking Heads. And then you can compare it to the Talking Heads version. Very, very different. Okay. And Kate Miller-Heidke's got a few different versions, some with her just singing and a piano, and others with actual, with a violin as well. But again, it's a great one to compare. But there's stacks of versions out there. There's so many, like, if you like, Pentatonics, the vocal a cappella group, they do a lot of very, very different versions of other songs. Obviously, the 2 cellos is a perfect one to use, again, when comparing it to another version. So 2 cellos does a great AC/DC, Thunderstruck, compare that to AC/DC. Good way to actually get your kids really involved in the music. But again, don't forget, the best thing for this is to really make sure that they are listening for the types of instruments and listening to how they're being performed, what techniques they're using to being performed, and then there's that comparison. And don't forget, you can use, I've got lots of worksheets for you to actually use this, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's my favorite saying. Use these differentiated worksheets that I'll show you later, which are for timbre and music or performing media, or tone color. If you like me, I prefer to use the word, call it tone color. Number 5 is timbre and music composition. So I know we talked about experiments in sound making, but that was more about just making different sounds and seeing and exploring the sounds. For this particular one, just try and get them to actually use whatever instruments are actually in the classroom and let them explore again the sounds that they've made. So I would do this after I've done the exploring sound one, and then get them to experiment with different techniques. Once they've had fun making different sounds, and you might even do this as a whole class, you know, what sort of other sounds can we do? Then get them to actually create an arrangement of a song. Now, you might want to say, okay, this is it might be a song that you're working on in class. And you say, okay, I want you to come up with an arrangement of this particular piece of music. Say it's Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I want to be able to hear different types of tone colors. How can you make that sound different, but being, you know, with the instruments that you've got, okay? And again, get them to work it out, perform it, rehearse it, perform it for each of the groups, and then get each group to sort of talk about the types of tone colors created, the types of timbre created, the techniques used, and all those sorts of things. Again, you could be award a winner for some, you know, creative groups. Could even be an assessment. These also make great assessments as well, or just fun activities for exploring what is timbre in the music. So let's talk about some resources that you might want to use for these types of lessons. So obviously you can go over to my blog over at juliajulia.com and find the actual blog post all on timbre. There's a stack of information there. It's for free. Or you might want to choose to actually watch it here on my YouTube channel if you're watching there. It's lots of free information, so you can find out what is timbre and all those sorts of things with your students. You might want to do that as read it together or watch it together before you do some of these lessons. As I said before, the timbre music listening worksheets now, these ones are a lifelong teaching tool. I have used them for years, and that's why I created them, because I still use them year after year after year after year, because it doesn't matter what piece of music you use. You just change the music, the questions remain the same. So as I said, in these particular worksheets, there are the comparison ones, which is number 2 and number 4. And then you can talk about similarities or differences or comparing or contrasting, whichever way you want to do it. Lots of great stuff there for you to use. Make an instrument assignment. I said this one as well is ready for you to go. Again, this is an assignment that I have used so many times over the years, and I keep using it because it works. And I keep using it because the kids enjoying it. If they didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't use it. And believe me, they do actually enjoy it. So this is a really fun one. Everything's there that you need: the task description, the student printout pages, their reflection, their procedure, composition, everything that they need to do this assignment is there. You just choose what pages you want. There's even some marking rubrics in there as well to help you. Then if you like doing the listening lessons with a bit more of a hands-on component to it, try these particular Match It puzzle cards. Now, as you can see at the bottom there, it's got an instrument, then it's actually got the picture of the instrument, name of the instrument, and then what it's classified as. And that goes for all of the instruments there, which is there's the ones for the orchestra. So there's 36. Whereas for this particular one, which is the world instrument ones, there's 60 instruments there. So it could be overwhelming for kids to give them both sets, but it could also be great because depending on what type of music you're actually listening to. But it's also like these can be used for so many other activities, not just for listening activities. These are great for so many different things. I love using them, and I have used them for years because I said they're just, the kids like using them. That's why. So don't forget, you can find plenty of these resources ready for you over in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. You can just go to Teachers Pay Teachers, and so if you type in Julia Teaching Resources in the search bar, I'm the only one there to come up with that name. And obviously you'll find all the resources that I have talked about in this video over in my store. Don't forget, if you'd like a copy of the free Elements of Music mind maps, go to juliajulia.com free mind maps. Now, these mind maps are going to be very, very helpful for you if you're doing the classification listening lessons. Really helpful. Okay, so there's some there, which is the instrument families, as well as the Hornsbostel sax version of classification. Don't forget, also plenty of information over at my blog there at juliajulia.com, or here on this YouTube site as well in my YouTube channel. Don't forget, there's plenty of videos here to help you. So let me stop share. So as I said, hopefully I've given you lots of different ideas for teaching timbre and what is timbre in your music classes with your kids, because this is fun. This is meant to be fun lessons. It's not meant to be something scary or weird. Look, your kids will enjoy it. Get them enjoying it, and if they enjoy it, they'll remember it. And then they're on their way to being musicians for life, not just for being in your classroom. Hopefully they'll take some of those fun music memories beyond the classroom Yeah, just beyond the classroom. So until next time, I'm Julia from GU Teaching Resources, and happy teaching. Bye.